Hi there, welcome to Boy Meets Quilt. I'm Andrew V. Hansen, and so today I decided for this video I would just give a few very basic beginner tips to sewing and maybe eventually to quilting, but this is just basically really focused on the sewing machine. I know with the COVID crisis happening, a lot of people have been buying sewing machines or pulling out their old sewing machines that they bought at a flea market decades ago but never touched. And so some of you might be struggling with starting up with sewing, and I just wanted to give you some few hints that I was given when I started sewing and some tips I wish I had been given when I first bought my sewing machine. When I first bought my sewing machine, I didn't really touch it for many years because I was too afraid to use it. It seemed like it went too fast and I wasn't ready for it, and I was afraid I was going to break it, and the tension never seemed to be quite right. It was an old used machine, so it probably needed to have been serviced before I started using it. But anyway, I wasted a lot of years not using the machine that I had in my home. And then I took a sewing class at FIT here in New York, which is the Fashion Institute of Technology. It was just a basic sewing class that I took with my friend, Ryan Miggy, who's in a previous video. And we were using industrial Juki machines, which the only thing you can do on those machines is sew in a straight line. And they were super fast and really intense, and once you used them for maybe a half hour, suddenly this little old home machine was not so scary anymore. So I don't say that you all need to use an industrial grade sewing machine in order to get over your fear of sewing. I'm just saying the domestic machines are made to be used by anybody, and they're very simple, and so I'm just going to give you some advice to get you started. The first number one bit of advice that I would give, which I've never had to be given because I always am good about reading manuals, but I know people out there have trouble reading the manuals of whatever machines they get. But I think for a sewing machine, it's especially important. Read your manual. You don't have to read it end to end. There are lots of things about a sewing machine that you may never use or don't even have any desire to use. That's fine. You can skip that stuff. But read the first several pages that talk about how to set up your machine, how to thread your machine, how to wind your bobbin, how to thread the bobbin, and every machine is a little bit different, and so you want to make sure. Maybe you have been sewing, but you bought a new machine, and you think, oh, it'll just be like my old machine. Well, guess what? They change things when they build new machines. And a lot of machines are similar, so you think it's going to be threaded the same way, but then they change one little thing, and so you have to just make sure you're doing everything correctly. Otherwise, you're going to have issues later on as far as like skipped stitches or breaking a needle or things that could have been prevented if you just read through your manual and followed the instructions. That said, if you don't have a manual, if you bought your machine used, or if you bought your machine 20 years ago and you have no idea where the manual is, most of these manuals are found online. So all you have to do is search the design, the brand of your machine, and the model number. So for instance, this machine is a Janome DC 2012. Just type that into web search, and you should be able to find the manual, and then you can either view it online or download it and print it out, whatever you're most comfortable with. So when you get your manual is going to tell you some important things, like what presser feet it comes with, the different stitches that your machine might have, and how to access those, how to change the stitch length, how to change the stitch width, things like that. That are very important to know. It also will tell you how to thread your machine, and that is also a very important tip that everyone should know, something that I wasn't quite aware of when I first started sewing. Thread spools are threaded two different ways. You have a spool like this where the thread, if you look at the thread, it all just kind of lines up in horizontal lines. Whereas if you look at a spool of thread like this, the thread crisscrosses each other and is in diagonal lines. It kind of has a woven effect to it. So depending on how the spool is threaded, it depends on how you thread your machine. So for my machine, well, for any machine, when your spools have the crisscross pattern, you're going to have it set up like this spool of thread is here, where the spool itself is horizontal. And then you thread your machine as your instructions tell you to. However, for a spool like this, my machine happens to come with a secondary bar, which can be used for a couple different purposes. The main purpose is to be able to spool your thread, to thread your machine with your spool on this bar. And that way, you want your spool to be vertical when you're threading your machine. If you don't have one of these, you can always buy an upright spool holder. You can find those on Amazon. They're very inexpensive. Or, I mean, I personally have just taken like a mug from my kitchen and plopped this in there. It makes a lot of noise because it bounces around in there, and it's not ideal, but it works. Another tip that I found handy when I bought my new machine was that I went online to the Janome website and I looked up my specific machine, the DC2012, and on the Janome website for that machine, it lists all of the available accessories specific for that machine. Now, a lot of those accessories can be used for different models of the Janome machines. But there are a lot of accessories that Janome makes that cannot be used for this specific machine, and so those were not on the list. And so that was really helpful, especially when I decided I wanted to try out free motion quilting. I just went to that list and I found anything that had to do with free motion quilting, and I looked at the description to see if it was what I needed, and then I went ahead and purchased it. Okay, so the next bit of advice is cleaning your machine. This is very important. Now again, this is where reading your instruction manual will come in handy. I'm going to show you how I clean my machine, but my machine is different from a lot of machines. My machine has a drop-in bobbin. Some machines have the bobbin that you stick in under here, and so those machines tend to need oil. My machine specifically doesn't use oil and tells you in the instruction manual, do not put oil in this machine. It'll actually hurt the machine. So that's another reason why you really need to read your instruction manual and make sure that you are taking care of your machine properly. So what I like to do when I clean my machine is I will clear out my thread by clipping it at the top and pulling it out through the needle. And then I just take my little brush here and I do a quick little swipe here, and I open up my machine and I do some brushing, get all that lint out that's been building up, and then I work on the bobbin. So I take out my bobbin of thread and then I unscrew it. This is a little thing that came with my machine, but you could obviously use an actual screwdriver. It might actually be easier for a lot of people because it doesn't have a handle. And I just take my brush again and I make sure there's no lint on there, do a quick brush of that, and then I take out my bobbin case, brush that off. And then here's the really important part of what you need to clean. You need to clean out your bobbin case. So I do that with my brush. And this, I haven't been sewing a whole lot lately, so my machine is relatively clean. But especially when I've been quilting, I generally clean out this area of my machine every time I'm done for the day or the evening. Because quilting with the batting and the thread and everything builds up a lot of lint. And so you really want to make sure this is all cleaned out. Then I take a piece of pipe cleaner and fold it in half, and I just kind of do some quick digging around the bobbin holder. So I just kind of stick it in there, because that really builds up. You can start to see, even with what little sewing I've been doing, there's been some buildup. And I just try and get everywhere that I can. This really does the trick for a daily cleaning. And that's it, and then I put everything back. Okay, and now the final, and what I would say the most important piece of advice for anyone who's starting off sewing. Do not be afraid of your machine. Don't be like I was. Don't just let it sit under a table or in a closet for years and years before you finally use it. Machines are under our control. Most machines have some sort of speed control, so you can either, through your pedal, slow or speed it up, or on my machine, I can adjust a sliding control that adjusts the speed of my machine. Do whatever is comfortable. Sew as slowly as you need to sew when you're first starting out, and as you get more comfortable and more practice, you'll be able to speed it up if you want, or you don't have to. It's totally up to you. We're just sewing for our own enjoyment at this point, so just do whatever makes you comfortable. And remember, you are in control of the machine. If you feel like it's getting out of control, stop the machine, lift your foot off the pedal, just take a break. You do not need to just keep sewing even though you're uncomfortable or it's going too fast or doing something you don't want it to do. Just stop and then take a breath and then start over again. I'm certainly glad that I got over my fear of using my machine, and I am now so happy to have something to do, especially right now when sometimes I know things are starting to reopen, but sometimes I personally don't want to go outside still. So what better way to spend my time but then to work on a little project here with my good old sewing machine. So I hope this is helpful to you. I hope this encourages all you beginning sewers out there to take the leap and start using your machine, make some face masks, make some napkins, some curtains, whatever, hem some pants or skirts, whatever makes you happy, whatever gets you started on using machines. As always, happy crafting, happy making. If you enjoyed this video and you want to make sure you don't miss out on any future videos, be sure to click on subscribe and be sure to like this video, and let me know if you have any questions or comments, or if there's anything I can help you with or this community in general can help you with. Leave questions and comments below and we'll get right back to you. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.